Ready? Good. All right, thank you everyone for coming to my MS OPORD brief. Before I begin, I'd like to orient you to a couple of your references. First of all, if you look in your OPORD, I don't know if you still have yours, but if you look in the back of your OPORD, attached you'll see various graphics which you can use to your advantage in terms of visualizing the different phases of our maneuver, etc. Also, another thing to note is that we have two terrain models here. One obviously is the bigger one to capture our area of interest. Down here we have a smaller one for our AO, for our platoon itself. Also, it's likely to note that right now we're going to be operating in our own regular time zone, the local time zone. Are there any questions about that? All right, for task organizations. Task organization, we have just the main components of the platoon. We have first, second, and weapon squad. I'm just going to say that your first squad and your third squad. Okay. All right. So attached to our platoon, we also have a medic, an FO, and we also have the company XO. He's going to be attached to the platoon as well. Now the general situation. For a couple of months now, we've been deployed into the country of New Zetastan under the provisions set by the United Nations Security Council. The reason we're here is in order to help the local government, the New Zeta government, to establish itself as a strong entity within the region. And right now, we're trying to defeat our opponents, the ZPA forces. So what we're going to do as our platoon, as part of our broader strategy in terms of the battalion level, is allow that government to gain a foothold within its own region and gain military supremacy. Now moving on, if you come over here and look at my terrain model, this is our area of interest, also known as the company AO Talon. Now to orient you to the map, we have a couple of basic points. First of all, this star over here represents Fob Strike, where we are currently located. Over here, obviously we have the northern wing. You can also visualize the different roads over here. We have route Avalanche over here to the south. We have route Mustang over here to the west, and route Camaro to the east. And this is a perfect representation of West Point. As you can see, we have West Point up here in terms of the cantonment. Down here would be Fort Montgomery. So you can use your knowledge to sort of apply it to this region. Moving on, there's various obstacles in this region, various things that you can look at. I'd first like to orient you to our objective. The company's objective is over here, and that is to say it's Objective Eagle. And within Objective Eagle, the company's designated three main objectives for the three platoons. First of all, our objective is Objective Cardinal over here to the east. Second platoon's objective is Objective Sparrow towards the middle portion of the Objective Eagle. And over on the the west, we have Objective Condor. And third platoon is going to be handling that. Our individual objectives will be to seize these locations in order to prevent the enemy on these locations from reinforcing enemy on other AOs for not only the company level, but also the battalion. So the main purpose is that we want to prevent the enemy from fleeing and reinforcing. Or even better yet, we want to prevent the enemy from coming off other AOs and coming onto our objectives and catching us off guard. So in terms of obstacles, as you can see, there's various mountains to the southwest, these ridge lines, Turkey Ridge, Long Mountain. All of these mountains comprise various obstacles within our own area of interest. The reason these are important is because en route to the objective, we're going to have to find an avenue approach such that we can avoid unnecessary obstacles, that we can move quickly. Now it's very important to note because we're going to be moving at nighttime. So we're going to make sure that if we're traveling through the middle of the AO, we don't want to run into a lake and have to figure out which lake it is, or maybe run into a mountain, not be sure, and be unsure about our own land navigation. That way we want to know the area of interest, so that way when we actually start moving on the ground, we know exactly what to do and when, so we don't waste time in the operation. There's also various roads in the area of interest. We have fire breaks 1 and 2 that sort of cut off the area of interest halfway, so that way en route to the objective, we're going to have to avoid these locations because, quite frankly, the enemy might be doing anything in terms of ambushes on the road or even potentially looking up on these higher ground locations to try to spot us. the reason the enemy would try to spot us, obviously, is that they could radio to higher. They could tell them, hey, we have enemy movement here, send reinforcements. Then our objective could be a lot harder than it actually is. Or maybe yet, they see us and they're like, oh, hey, there's a bunch of enemy traveling up the road. That way we know we need to reinforce the main effort. We're getting ready for battle. And that's going to be really key in terms of preparation for their own defense forces. Now, avenues of approach, as I said before, we want to avoid unnecessary hazards. What we're going to do is we're going to move in a general south to north direction towards the objective. And I'll get into more detail here when we actually approach the objective. But the fact is that since we're going to be moving with the other platoons, those other platoons are going to come around sort of to the west along these mountains, these ridge lines, whereas we're going to come along the east side. And inevitably, we're going to have to cross with fire break 1 or 2. In terms of cover and concealment, this entire area of interest is going to be covered in dense foliage. So that's going to maybe prove to be a positive thing in our own approach in terms of concealing us from the enemy. It could also prove to be a bad thing because the enemy could likely have used this foliage to their own benefit in terms of their own defensive operations. In terms of cover itself, obviously, we have various ridges en route to the objective in which we could use to prevent indirect fire, etc. But like I said, because we have indirect fire assets, mortar assets at FOB strike, the enemy could also use that to their own advantage. Now in terms of key terrain, this comes at the very highest level, the battalion level, that we want to dominate these top key terrain areas. And I would like to say that the high terrain is probably the best of the key terrain because it allows the enemy not only to see us en route to our objective, but it allows us, if we capture this key territory, to see the enemy. And in order to fight the enemy, because actually you can see these objectives are towards the valley areas. So if we're on the top of the hill, it's going to be a lot easier for us to assault these objectives. Are there any questions about the terrain itself? All right, I'm going to move over here to my blow up the model. Now this is a little bit more important to us. This in itself is our area of operations, which is to say this is right here, this is objective cardinal, everything that's highlighted by white. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking forward to in our operation. Now we also need to know specifically all the terrain around this area. There's a large ridge line going on the west side and sort of a saddle towards the middle and eventually this top hill. Now this top hill, I'm going to be talking about a lot later, but this is going to be very key to know exactly where it is in terms of not only positioning to the objective, but also where it is in relation to the swamp en route to the objective. So in terms of obstacles, obviously we have a swamp to the south. Now this could be proved to be a good thing or a bad thing. It could be a good thing because it will allow us to conceal ourselves from the enemy, because enemy patrols probably aren't going to go through a swamp. They're going to think, oh, the Americans don't want to go through swamps, so we want to avoid that. We're just going to focus on these key terrain. That could actually prove to be fatal for them, because we could use that terrain to our own advantage en route to the objective. Other obstacles, obviously, I said fire breaks 1 and 2 pose a great threat to us. Because the enemy could ambush us at these locations, we want to be prepared for them. We want to be on them for the least amount of time as possible. So instead of hand-railing the roads up to the objective, we're just going to cross it straight over. We're going to have to use very concise measures, such as using the scroll method and crossing linear danger areas. And that's going to come into hand when we're actually planning for rehearsals. Now in terms of our avenues of approach, I've outlined 2 basic avenues of approach. You can't see here, but on the big map, there's essentially a brook over here, so we're not going to be able to cross from the southeast. So our main avenues of approach, first of all, are root tomahawk. Like I said, if we cross through that swamp, that's going to allow us to prevent the enemy from seeing us. It also provides sort of a de facto defense of our own ORP. So we could come through here, set up our ORP in the swamp, that way the enemy patrols aren't likely to go through them. And then we could eventually go to the objective right over the hill. This also serves a good benefit because it's at least one major terrain feature away, which would be the hill, which allows us to sort of defend ourselves in terms of preventing the enemy from doing patrols around the hill. Our secondary option for avenue approach is called route dagger. And essentially we'd be crossing over this ridgeline, over the saddle, and then back over the hill. This has benefits and drawbacks. First of all, the benefits are that if we cross this ridgeline, first of all, the enemy is probably going to know, or first of all, for benefits, it's sort of we're on key terrain the entire time. We don't have to worry about our mobility in the swamp. So it might actually be faster. In terms of drawbacks, however, the enemy will know that we're crossing over key terrain, and they might be more likely to send patrols. Moreover, we're not going to have the swamp to help protect us because the enemy isn't going to be worrying so much about the ridgeline as going through the swamp. So they're more likely to send patrols around the ridgeline, which they know is key terrain. So our ORP, secondary OP, which would be located just to the west of the hill, is probably a little bit more dangerous than setting one up in the ORP in terms of the swamp. Now, cover and concealment, the same rules apply as I said over in the greater terrain model. This entire area is covered by foliage. But as a de facto concealment, we could use the swamp to our advantage because it allows us to hide in the swamp within itself. In terms of key terrain, obviously, this is probably going to be our biggest measure. Both key terrain and observation in fields of fire. For observation in fields of fire, we're going to be at the higher point, and obviously, since we will have the higher ground advantage, we'll be able to see the enemy. And this is going to be very important because this sort of this spur that comes off towards the north is exactly where we're going to be putting our forces in terms of the support by fire position, because it allows them to go up, down on the enemy, and gives them a distinct advantage. In terms of key terrain, it's key for two reasons. First of all, the enemy has a recon team that can spot us and tell their higher units where we are. So if we capture this key terrain, that prevents them from noticing exactly where we are. The second reason that we want to capture this key terrain, as I said before, is it allows us to attack up from the up higher down onto the objective. So that gives us a distinct higher ground advantage. Are there any questions about terrain at all? Nothing? All right, on to weather. I attached a chart detailing exactly what happens with weather in the OPORD, but I'm going to tell you the most important factors right now. First of all, it's been raining the past couple days, and it's more likely to rain in the future. So especially during the operations, this is going to affect us twofold. First of all, most importantly, this swamp might flood over. All right? That might limit our mobility entirely. We might have to take route deck. Hopefully not. I'll make the call when the time comes, but hopefully we can use the swamp to our own advantage. Same thing with the brook down to the southeast. That might flood, might affect us in some way, but I expect it not to. Also, when we look at the weather, we know that it's raining, we're going to have to do a couple things in terms of sort of maintenance of our own equipment. First of all, we need to make sure that maps are waterproof, that every soldier has weapons cleaning kits, especially the weapons team. We also need to make sure that things that should be taken on, like such as Gore-Texes, are actually accounted for. So squad leaders need to make sure to conduct PCCs, PCIs, to make sure that every soldier has necessary items, especially Gore-Texes, because we know it's going to get a bit cold. Another important thing to note out of the weather column is illumination. We're going to see a lot of low illumination during the nighttime operation. What this means is that we're going to be able to use night vision goggles as a distinct advantage over our enemy. The enemy's not going to be able to see us at night, whereas we will. So that's going to give us sort of an advantage. Necessarily, squad leaders need to make sure to check their subordinates in terms of having fresh batteries viable for maybe 48 hours or so for this entire operation. Because those night vision goggles we do not want to lose as an added benefit. Are there any questions about weather? All right, for our enemy. Now, I'd like to say that the enemy is divided into a couple different pieces. The first one is the enemy recon team. The enemy recon team consists of about 4 people armed with AK-47s. And their main objective is to screen in the vicinity of objective Cardinal in order to determine exactly where we are located and to prevent us from going up to the objective. Their exact purpose is that they want to radio to higher to tell the higher ups exactly where we are, so that way they can determine whether or not to send reinforcements. So that's probably going to be one of the most key things in our movement, is that we want to prevent the enemy recon team, which I expect to be located on this hill because they have a great observation, from actually seeing us and sending those reinforcements. The next team that they have is the enemy AT team, the anti-take team. They're going to be, they have various capabilities. They're probably going to be about 4 people armed with AK-47s, and most importantly, they're going to have about 1 to 2 RPGs. Now, Granted, these RPGs are probably going to be focused on preventing a vehicle attack. We don't have vehicles, but still they could still pose a great danger to damage our platoon en route to the objective. So we also want to take out theirs. The last unit within our own area of operations is the enemy motorized infantry squad. The motorized infantry squad consists of about 9 militiamen armed with AK-47s, and they have about 1 RPK. They're probably going to be the main infantry squad that we're going to face, the main force that we actually want to attack. Attached to the motorized infantry squad, most importantly, is probably their biggest asset, which is 1 to 2 BTRs. Now these BTRs are very important because they pose the greatest firepower. They have a 30mm cannon, a 14.5mm machine gun they could easily use against our infantry units. And intel says that they don't have day-night sights, but they probably have thermal sights. What that means is that if anyone in our enemy can see us at night, it's probably the BTR. They can use the thermal imaging. We're going to counter this in a couple different ways. First of all, is that when we actually engage them, we're going to be using items such as AT-4s and javelins. And what this happens is that when we actually attack them and we have explosions on the target, the thermal energy generated by those explosions could probably drown out their sights. You're not going to be able to see us because there's a great fire in front of them. As sort of a safe measure, we're going to have thermal incendiary grenades, so that way we can throw them in front of them and it's going to blind out their sights. That way, once we do that, the BTR is pretty much useless because it can't determine who's enemy and who's friendly, and then we can actually continue on to our objective. So that's probably the biggest thing that we want to worry about is that BTR. Now in terms of the friendly units, in our own platoon, we don't have to worry about anything really within our own area of operations, but if you look over here into our company area of operations, which is our area of interest, we have 3rd Squad over here at Objective Condor, or 3rd Platoon. We have 2nd Platoon over here at Objective Sparrow. Now, since they have the same purposes, which is to seize the objectives in order to prevent the enemy from gaining reinforcements, from reinforcing the main effort, we're going to be seeing various enemy maneuvers around this area. First of all, we want to make sure that these enemies, which are probably equal in strength to our own objective, don't come and reinforce the enemy here. If that happens, well, we're going to have to deal with it. We have various assets, and I believe that we can actually counter them. Just as that we have BTRs, every militia, motorized infantry squad on these objectives has BTRs. So that if anything comes to do with reinforcement, I believe that they will send BTRs up the fire breaks and eventually reach our objective. That way, it's going to be crucial that we secure the objective, especially in the gateway to the road, that we can prevent attacks from the BTRs. Now, in the grander area of operations, towards the northwest area is all in the Bedard district. This is all enemy controlled. So towards the southeast up to the river, eventually we have all of our forces. So if anything happens, the enemy forces towards the northwest are probably going to push in our long route Camaro, and if they reach our objective first, we'll deal with them appropriately. We're going to be seeing relatively equal sized elements, but also I believe that they would go to these objectives first. So we're going to probably receive intel from the other platoons, 3rd and 2nd platoon, pending any kind of enemy reinforcement of the objectives. But our main objective is to prevent the enemy on on Objective Cardinal from reinforcing the enemy's main effort, which is completely out of our area of operations for our platoon. Are there any questions about enemy friendly, anything to do with situation? Okay. Well, the platoon's mission is to attack to seize Objective Cardinal no later than 10/0400 October 2001 in order to prevent the enemy from reinforcing the enemy's main effort at Objective Sparrow, which is 2nd Platoon's objective. Are there any questions about that mission? Okay, moving on. All right, for execution. There's a couple things I want to talk about. First of all is that the general concept of the operation. What we're trying to do in the battalion level, if we think about the battalion level, our general objective is to to attack to gain more ground in the area of interest. So the battalion's actual mission is we're going to conduct this via penetration of the enemy's ground. In terms of our own company, what we're going to be doing is that we want to attack to control this entire area of operations, which is AO Talon for the company level. And that way, we do two things. First of all, we prevent the enemy from gaining a foothold, in which case they could launch future attacks on our FOB, or even our own enemy forces, the naval port, the airport, which we got our supplies in. The second reason we want to attack to seize this area is that we want to allow ourselves to not only gain control of the major avenues of approach into the Bedard district, but also to serve as sort of a general area that we can, a buffer zone, so we can launch attacks into the Bedard district and expand around the ground. Are any questions about that at all? So for our own platoon, we're going to be doing that. We're going to be attacking to seize the objective in various ways. First squad, okay, when we actually get to objective Cardinal, first squad is going to attack to seize building number 1. And you can look at, if you look at the OPORD pictures, it details which building is building 1, building 2. But building 1 is towards the southwest. And what you see there is that both building 1 and building 2 are towards the south part of the objective. So building 1 is to the south of the objective, and building 2 is towards the east. So first squad is going to attack to seize building 1 in order to prevent the enemy from reinforcing the enemy's main effort on Objective Sparrow, the main effort. The secondary effort is going to be third squad. And they're going to attempt to breach, to penetrate defenses at this location on Objective Cardinal in order to prevent, in order to allow first and second squad to go through and seize the buildings on the objective. The second squad also will be trying to attack to seize building number 2 on the objective in order to prevent the enemy from reinforcing the enemy's main effort. And weapons squad is going to be conducting a support by fire position, as I said before, on this hill. And they're going to support by fire to suppress the enemy on objective Cardinal in order to allow first and second squad to seize the buildings on the objective. All right, moving down into the scheme of maneuver. Our scheme of maneuver is broken down into 5 phases: planning and reconnaissance, movement to the objective, movement to the ORP, leaders recon, actions on the objective, and finally exfiltration. So the first one that I want to talk about is planning and reconnaissance, and this is probably the most important one. It starts at the very receipt of this OPORD and doesn't stop until 1900 on the 9th of October 2011. What happens at 1900 is that 2nd Platoon out of the company's main effort SPs from FOB strike to go to their objective. What happens at the company level is that 2nd Platoon is going to be leaving first. An hour after that, 3rd Platoon is going to leave. An hour after that, we're going to be the last ones to leave from FOB strike to the objective. So we want to use this to our advantage in preparation. Various things that we're going to have to do are rehearsals, probably the most important. As I said, we want to prevent any sort of ambushes or attacks along fire breaks 1 and 2. So we're going to have to practice scrolling. Also, we're going to have to practice setting up an ORP, securing the ORP. We're also going to have to practice our various tasks on the objective, such as support by fire to suppress, breaching, penetration, and obviously seizing buildings. For first and second squad, that's probably going to be the biggest thing to rehearse, is actually seizing those buildings. We're going to have to practice room clearings, hallway clearings, stairway clearings, because we think there's multiple levels on those buildings. And we want to be able to secure those right from the outset. Third squad has a very important task in that when you engage the BTR, because your objective is to conduct a breach to penetrate the enemy defenses on this objective. And what we consider as one of the defenses is the BTR. So you're going to have to do a couple different things. You're going to have to practice engaging a vehicle. You're going to have to practice cutting down wire, et cetera, because we don't know exactly what kind of defenses they have there. We don't know if it's going to be concertina wire or it's going to be mines, et cetera. But we know that it's going to be a pretty hasty defense because they haven't been there long. So practice all those various things. You're also going to have to pick up necessary gear. Third squad, when you engage the BTR with incendiary grenades, that's something that you're going to have to pick up from supply. various things like that. You're going to have to pick up AT-4s, 2 javelins, and other necessary equipment. Everyone's going to be carrying with them IR chem lights and other various measures, so that way we can actually use this to our advantage. Also, squad leaders are going to have to pick up VS-17 panels. And there's a longer list of things that in the OPORD for things that you want to go down to WB4 to pick up. So the second phase I want to talk about is movement to the ORP. This is probably going to be one of the most important ones. Is that when we move to our ORP, which I presume is going to be along Route Tomahawk unless we receive intel about the swamp or other measures in which we have to take this route, we're going to go to our ORP, we're going to stop here, and we're going to set up our security. And if you want to look towards the actual security within the ORP, there's an image within the OPORD that you can look at.
Attention all cadets, attention all cadets. Formation for COs and RDOs goes at 16:15 in front of CGR. The uniform is Army Combat Uniform. Formation for hours goes at 16:30 in front of CGR. The uniform for all area tours is Army Combat Uniform. I say again, the uniform for all area tours is Army Combat Uniform. Additionally, TAPS tonight for all regiments goes at 23:30. Go Army Judo. CGR out.
They're going to have to maintain these positions and space out security like that. All the M249 saws are going to have to space out so that we actually stay secure. For the movement to the ORP, the order of march is 1st squad, 2nd squad, weapon squad, then 3rd squad. We're going to be traveling in fire team wedge, squad column, platoon column. And between fire teams, I expect at least 25 meters distance. Between squads, I expect at least 50 meters distance. The reason we have these is that way, in case 1st squad gets engaged, 2nd squad or even weapon squad can maneuver around, has the ability to maneuver around and flank the enemy. The reason we want that is we don't want the enemy to be able to fix multiple squads at once if we're so bunched up together. So the movement phase doesn't actually end until we actually finish setting up our ORP. The next phase is the leader's recon phase. And this starts at the beginning of when we actually finish setting up our ORP. It doesn't end until we're set up and ready to go right by the objective. What that means is that during leader's recon, a couple of different things are going to happen. First of all, myself and all major chain of command members, being me, 1st squad leader, 2nd squad leader, 3rd squad leader, weapon squad leader, the FO, the RTO, and the XO are all going to go to the objective by going up to this hill and looking down on the enemy. And before then, we're going to use mortar fires from headquarters to actually suppress the enemy recon team on the objective, maybe even destroy them, hopefully. But anyway, we're going to move our recon team to this point, which will be newly cleared. We're going to look at the objective, and we're going to determine various things. We're going to make sure that the enemy hasn't reinforced their position with multiple BTRs. We're not going to see any regular infantry squads as opposed to militiamen. Other various things that are going to be of critical importance to not only ourselves, but also the company level intel. Because we have to know that for every soldier of the enemy that we have here, there's probably a weaker spot somewhere else that the company can exploit. So we're going to report that up. After we return to our objective, back to our ORP, that's when we're going to start to do the that's where we're going to start to actually make preparations to plan and eventually go to the objective. But actually, during the leader's recon within itself, there's a 5-point contingency plan outlined in the OPORD. Basically, I want to say that, first of all, we all know where we're going. Major chain of command members, like I said before. In case, we're probably going to expect to be back around 1:00 a.m. on the 10th of October. In case we don't get back, the people who are going to be there, there's going to be the PSG is going to have supreme chain of command authority over the team leaders, is going to make sure that everything's running right. And in case we don't come back, and we're going to take Alpha Team Weapon Squad leader, Alpha Team Weapon Squad with us for security, by the way. But by the time we get back to the ORP, the PSG is going to either wait till 1:00, in which case we'll come back, or if we don't come back, then he's going to wait until about 3:00 and he's going to radio into the CO. And he's going to talk with the CO then to determine the proper course of action in terms of actions onto the objective. Moving on though, Our next phase, and probably the biggest one, is actions on the objective. What happens is that during Leader's recon, we eventually come up to the hill. Weapon squad will leave the release point from the hill is going to be situated towards the bottom part of this spur right here. It's important to note that not only weapon squad will come here, but also the PSG and the medic. And they're going to be setting up a CCP behind weapon squad in the support by fire position. Now this is going to allow them to do a couple things. First of all, it's allowing them to be in a safe, static position so that we can conduct CCP. But it also allows them a decent enough level of ground, so that way, in case of an emergency and we need to call medevac, we can call a medevac to this location. As a secondary option, if we don't have that medevac availability, eventually we're going to have to, and I'll explain later, we're going to have to go to the landing zone that we're going to establish and capture, and we'll be conducting a normal CASEVAC operations using aerial assets as well from the company level. Anyway, weapon squad will get ready in position to support by fire from the northwest down onto the objective. And by the time this comes around, first, second, and third squads are all going to be to the west of the objective, still out of view. Now for the actions on the objective phase, this all begins with the company commander says the code word Gators. What this happens is that everyone out of not only our objective, but also Objective Condor and Objective Sparrow for 3rd and 2nd Platoon are going to simultaneously attack the enemy positions. And we want to do this so that we can prevent the enemy from loading up on one area and then we attack a position that no one's at. So after we actually start attacking via code word Gators, a couple different things is going to happen. Weapon squads, actually, we're going to call HQ. They're going to fire mortar fire, 120 millimeter mortar fire onto the objective within itself. That's the TRP AB1005. And using that, the purpose of that is to suppress enemy on the objective. Maybe it's going to be maybe 10, 15 rounds of high explosive mortar fire. That way we can actually suppress the enemy on the objective. After that terminates, a couple things are going to happen. Weapon squad is going to actually initiate the attack by support by fire to suppress enemy between phase line knot and phase line tie. What that's going to happen is that it's going to keep their rightmost boundary, their buffer zone for the weapons on phase line tie. That way we don't fire our own friendlies, because we don't want fratricide in this operation, especially before that building. And what's going to happen is that 3rd squad is going to move up, it's going to maneuver, and is going to breach to penetrate enemy defenses on the objective in order to allow 1st and 2nd squad to go and attack to seize the buildings. So a couple implied tasks. First of all is that they want to engage the BTR first. That's probably the most important enemy asset that they actually have. So after they attack to kill that enemy, we're going to have 1st and 2nd squad maneuver in once they can. First squad is going to attack to seize building number 1. They're going to clear it. They're going to make sure it's good to go. And right after they finish, seizing the building, they're going to come out and we're going to radio it up and say, "Hey, we're good to go." We're going to tell the 2nd squad leader, "Hey, we've seized the building. Now we can continue." So when this happens, the 2nd squad leader is going to do a couple different things. First of all, he's going to yell "shift fire," and in that case, weapon squad will shift fire to their left, such that their rightmost boundary is now outside of phase line knot. What happens is that they may not be shooting right over the objective, but it still gives a decent amount of suppressive fire in order to allow 2nd squad to maneuver in and seize building number 2. In case that the weapon squad leader can't hear shift fire, 2nd squad leader is going to do a couple different contingency plans. If shift fire doesn't work, he's going to be waving his hands around using an IR chem light in order to show the weapon squad leader, "Hey, we're ready to go." If that doesn't happen, then he's going to try to throw it over or even use radio communications. We not only have radio communications, but we also have basic MACOMs as a secondary use in case that our ASIPs don't necessarily work. After weapon squad has shifted fire to the left, second squad is going to attack to seize building number 2 in order to prevent the enemy from reinforcing enemy main effort on objective Sparrow. And they're going to go in, they're going to conduct the same type of operation that first squad's going to do. They're going to clear the building, they're going to seize it, they're going to make sure everything's good. After everyone on the objective is either killed or captured, we're going to maneuver. We're going to move the EPW team, which is going to be first squad, is going to be in charge of securing the EPWs in front of building number 2. So we're going to have an EPW collection point in front of building number 2. Next, weapon squad, after receiving word that the objective has been seized, is going to maneuver to the rally point on the objective, and they're going to help secure the entire objective. So now, what's going to happen is that the CCP is going to be relocated in front of building number 1. The EPW collection point is going to be in front of building number 2, and all the elements on the objective are postured similar to the security operation on the ORP, such that we can prevent any kind of counterattack from follow-on forces from the 3-3 ZPA. And that's going to be crucial because all this entire time we know that we want to prevent the enemy from reinforcing. Well, in that bad worst-case scenario case that the enemy does reinforce, we want to be prepared for them. And this phase doesn't actually end until the New Zeta Army, and we expect a small contingent force to be traveling up the fire breaks, eventually to reach our position. And they're going to come in, and they're going to reinforce our own position such that we can maneuver out of that area and go to the exfil phase. Are there any questions about actions on the objective at all? Nothing at all? Your second squad leader, right?
I think you said first, sorry.
First? Okay. All right, tell me what you're going to do.
Alright, so at the beginning of the mission, my squad will be stacked right here. At the call sign Gator, the mortars will rain down, and then the weapon squad will open up. The third squad will initiate contact on the vehicles. Upon the completion of this, my squad will go and take control of building number 1. And then on completion of that, we'll come out of the building, tell second squad, and the weapon squad will shift fire so they can continue the mission.
Okay. A couple things. First of all is that, remember, it's attack to seize the building.
Attack to seize.
Second is that third squad's not only going to be talking about the BTR, but in case there are defenses that we can't get past, let's say they manage to get HESCO barriers around the entire area, they're going to have to breach and penetrate those first to allow you to go through. In the case that you are available to go through, just go ahead and maneuver.
That's right.
All right. Third squad leader, what are you going to do?
After call sign Gators is called and weapon squad initiates, then as third squad we will attack the BTRs with javelins or AT-4s or incendiary grenades, and attack to penetrate, breach to penetrate the defenses of the enemy to allow first and second squad to get in and get the buildings.
All right, good. And can you tell me what the purpose of the incendiary grenade is?
The BTR has the only night vision, they have thermal vision, and if we throw incendiary grenades, it will wash out the thermals, and they won't be able to see us.
All right, good. Any more questions about actions on the objective? All right, the next phase that we have is exfiltration. Now, at this point, this begins after all objectives in terms of AO Talon for like Objective Eagle for the entire company have been seized. So we're going to have to wait until 3rd and 2nd platoon are ready to go. Moreover, we're going to have to wait until the New Zeta Army has not only reinforced defensive positions on Objective Cardinal, but also on Objective Condor and Objective Sparrow. So after that has been good to go, and the company tells us that we can start to begin the exfiltration phase. We're going to be maneuvering over this hill, over this ridge, eventually to what we're going to establish as helicopter landing zone number 2. And we're going to be moving in a similar manner. We're going to be moving with 2nd squad, weapon squad, 1st squad, and 3rd squad in that order of march. And from there, we're going to maneuver. And before that, if we have any casualties that we have to deal with, such as they can't be carried over the hill, and that we need an absolute medevac that should already have been taken care of in the actions on the objective. Anyway, we're going to maneuver over the ridge, and eventually we're going to reach helicopter landing zone number 2. We're going to call up to the company, hey, we're ready to go. When we actually go to the objective, a couple things are going to happen. First of all is that we're going to have to secure helicopter landing zone 2. We're going to have to find a good soft area where there's no dense foliage or anything so that a helicopter can actually land there. We're going to posture ourselves in a similar defensive position as the ORP and the objective itself. We're going to have 360 security around the entire area, and most importantly is that we're actually going to have to mark the objective. We have different ways of marking the objective. First is the VS-17 panels that we can lay down in the middle of the field. Secondary option, especially if it's nighttime, is you can use IR chem lights, various other options on top of the VS-17 panels, sort of allow everyone from above to actually see us and send down exfiltration measures. Now the company has specifically designated 4 UH-60 Blackhawk helicopters to come and exfiltrate us first out of the entire company at helicopters landing zone number 1. There's no one else who's going to go with us, just 1st, 2nd, 3rd squad and weapons squad. So we could expect about an 8-minute delay between when we actually call up ready to exfil and they're actually coming down with the Blackhawks to come pick us up. During this time, you can see there's a very specific flight plan in the OPORD which will tell you that 1st squad is going to be in the first Blackhawk, 2nd squad is going to be in the 2nd Blackhawk, 3rd in the 3rd Blackhawk, and weapons squad is going to be in the last Blackhawk. Myself and the RTO are going to be traveling within the 4th Blackhawk to help the weapons squad make it out of there. 1st squad is going to see an attachment with a platoon sergeant and the medic. The XO is going to be with 2nd squad on the 2nd helicopter, and the FO is going to be with 3rd squad on the 3rd helicopter. From there, by the time we get back to the objective actually ends when all forces out of the entire company are back on the objective. Everything is accounted for and everything's ready to go. All right, are there any questions?